Africa is home to 1.4 billion people. Yet, the continent has no permanent representation at the United Nations Security Council, the body responsible for decisions on international peace and security. At the 2025 United Nations General Assembly, the presidents of Kenya, Sierra Leone, and Burundi renewed calls for 2 permanent seats for the continent. Africa's relationship with the United Nations dates back to its founding in 1945. At that time, most African states were still under colonial rule and had no say in shaping the United Nations Charter. Today, the continent accounts for more than a quarter of the UN member states, but none of its 54 countries have the power to veto decisions at the Security Council.
The largest regional bloc in the United Nations still has no permanent seat. This is unjust and untenable.
Africa deserves, ladies and gentlemen, at the very least, 2 permanent seats with full rights, including the right to veto, and 2 additional non-permanent seats on the United Nations Security Council.
This debate is not new. In 2005, African leaders meeting in Eswatini, Eswatini, adopted a consensus calling for 2 permanent seats with veto power and 5 non-permanent seats. 20 years on, that demands remain. Analysts say this lack of representation is especially challenging, given Africa's growing role within the UN itself.
You cannot have 54 countries in an organization. And when it comes to decision making, they're not represented. So that's why they call for the reform on the Security Council. Africa is ready in principle because they want to correct the abnormality that happens post-Second World War.
Supporters say Africa's exclusion undermines the Council's credibility, since the continent is often the center of its debate on conflict and sanctions. With its growing population, vast resources, and rising global influence, countries like Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa are often named as candidates for permanent seats.
Before this reform that Africa is pushing, before it scales through, there will be an enactment. There will be a kind of resolution. And who are the ones to assent to those resolutions? It's the P5 themselves. So I'm looking at that will be a serious crossroad for Africa.
With global power shifts and Africa's influence rising, the question of permanent representation is gaining urgency. 2 decades after the Eswatini Consensus, African leaders continue to press for seats on the Security Council. But opposition from existing permanent members has kept reform from moving forward. For now, the debate over Africans' role in the UN Security Council continues.